All right, so I'll give it a couple of minutes or a minute so we can get started with our town meeting tonight. Town hall meeting, I should say. All right, good evening, everybody. Happy Thursday, and welcome to this town meeting. I, Humberto Gurmilan, President of the Governing Board, call this special meeting to order for the San Isidro School District at 5:01. I would like to ask that all board members and other members here joining, mute your devices. Trustees of San Isidro School District, please also or will participate in this meeting via teleconference. The public may view the open session of this meeting via YouTube by accessing the link provided on the agenda. To listen to this meeting in Spanish, please call 1-978-435-0140 and enter the access code 820-620-396#. Si usted quiere accesar esta junta o escuchar la junta en español con traducción, puede marcar el número 1-978-435-0140 y la clave es 820-620-396, el signo de gato. Members of the public are welcome to record this meeting using their own personal devices. Prior to roll call, I would like to make clear for the record of this meeting, it should be reflected in the minutes that this governing board meeting is conducted pursuant to Governor Newsom's Executive Order N-29-20. At this moment, I'll move on to item number 2 in tonight's agenda prior to our town hall meeting. And this is a roll call, and I'll ask our superintendent, Dr. Gina Potter, to please conduct roll call for us.
Thank you, Mr. President. Moving on to agenda item number 2, which is roll call, beginning with, we have with us a board member, Mrs. Irene Lopez.
Nick, you're muted, Irene.
Would help, huh? I'm sorry, present.
Thank you, Mrs. Lopez. And Board Vice President, Mr. Antonio Martinez.
Present.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. And Board President, Mr. Humberto Gurmilan.
Present.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have watching via YouTube this evening our board clerk, Mr. Rudy Lopez. So present by our Zoom portion of the meeting, we have 3 board members, which makes a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you, Dr. Potter. And now I would like to request that each board member respond to the following questions. Board member Ms. Lopez, can you hear me well?
Yes.
Were you able to hear our proceedings up to this point?
Yes, sir.
And do you have a copy of tonight's agenda?
I do.
Thank you, Ms. Lopez. Mr. Martinez, can you hear me well?
Yes, I can.
Excellent. Were you able to hear our proceedings up to this point?
Yes.
Excellent. And do you have a copy of tonight's agenda?
Yes, I do.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. We'll now move on to item number 3, which is the flag salute. And I will ask you to please mute your microphones at this moment, and I will guide us, lead us in our flag salute. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item number 4 in tonight's agenda is approval of tonight's agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda for tonight.
So moved.
Mr. Martinez moves. And I will second. Did you second, Ms. Lopez? You're muted, so I don't know if you second. I'll second it. So motion by Mr. Martinez, and I will second it to approve tonight's agenda. Dr. Potter, can you, and there are no changes, right? Dr. Potter, could you help us with a roll call vote, please?
Calling for the roll call vote for agenda item number 4, the approval of the agenda, beginning with board member Mrs. Irene Lopez.
Yes.
Board Vice President, Mr. Antonio Martinez,
Yes.
and Board President, Mr. Humberto Gurmilan.
Yes.
Mr. President, the vote passes 3-0.
Thank you, Dr. Potter. We're moving on with the agenda approved. We're moving on to item number 5, which is general administration. And we will start with 5.1, which is our only item and tonight's business, which is the virtual town hall meeting to seek community and stakeholder input regarding the development of the long-range master facility plan for Smythe, La Mirada, and Child Development Center and Preschool. WLC Architects, Inc. President Jim Camillo will facilitate this virtual town hall meeting to seek community and stakeholder input regarding the development of the district's long-range master facility plan for Smythe, La Mirada, and Child Development Center and Preschool. Public comments and questions should be submitted via email by 6 p.m. So please submit your comments by 6 p.m. at the email account publiccomment@sysdschools.org. Again, if you want to send public comment communication, please do so by sending an email to publiccomment@sysdschools.org. And these public comments and questions will be read and answered following the presentation. So first, I will ask Mr. Mata to please read any public comment that was submitted prior to this moment. And Mr. Mata?
Mr. President, I do have 2 public comments. Would you like me to read them now or after the presentation?
Should we wait until the presentation so that all the comments are?
You know what I was thinking of, President Gurmilan, maybe if we read them now, that way the presenter can cater after he gives the presentation. He can also cater to those comments, and then obviously afterwards we should do it again with new public comment.
I agree. Okay, so now Mr. Mata, yeah, go ahead if you don't mind with the comments.
Sure. We have 2 comments, Mr. President, and I will start with the first one, which is pretty lengthy. The first public comment is from Melissa Hendrick, Preschool Facilities Input. And it starts, please remember, when examining the safety of our preschool campuses, it must be remembered that these facilities are not being used only by typically developing students as young as age 3. These facilities are also being used by preschool students with special needs who may be more likely to do things like run away, climb inappropriate structures, and jump off high places. These students are also more likely to have mobility needs, including general clumsiness and use of walkers and wheelchairs. Additionally, these facilities are being used by the preschool special education assessment team who worked with many students who are still 2 years old and who have no experience being supervised in a large group. Playgrounds. Playgrounds need to be fully fenced in. Currently, playgrounds at 2 of our preschool sites have spaces where the fencing is too high off the ground or not joined tightly enough, and students can slip under or between the fencing. They can lead to unsafe situations, both with students leaving a supervised area and with students hurting themselves trying to slip under or between the fencing. Additionally, at the CDC, there is no fence between the 2 playgrounds. This means that students can easily run off the playground where their class is being supervised. This can lead to unsafe situations for students who do run across undetected and means that entire attention of one teacher must be devoted to supervising this crossing rather than enriching the students' outdoor learning time. Furthermore, the latches on some fences at multiple sites are within student reach. This is, again, a safety hazard, as students can open the fences themselves and leave supervised areas. If we are unable to lock these fences during recess time due to concerns with needing to be able to quickly leave the playground in the event of an active shooter, we at least need to make fencing high enough that the latches are accessible to adults only. In addition to fencing, the shape of some of the playgrounds leads to supervision difficulties. Areas like passages between or next to classrooms with high walls that teachers cannot see past need to be fenced off so that students are not able to get in these spaces and play unsupervised. Another safety concern that arises on our playgrounds is having an appropriate and clearly marked space for bike track. When students are moving quickly on bikes and encounter slower moving pedestrian students or students with mobility challenges, danger can arise. We need on each playground an evenly paved space that has clear painting to mark it as the bike track and also to mark the direction in which the students should be riding. This leads to another safety concern in our playgrounds, which is even ground. At the CDC, there are many cracks and bumps in the pavement and holes in the rubber padding under the play structures. Preschool students are still developing their gross motor skills, and navigating these obstacles can result in injury, especially for any students with mobility needs or devices like wheelchairs and walkers. We also need more shade on our preschool playgrounds. Not only do we need shade over rest areas like picnic tables, but also over play spaces like sandboxes, water tables, and open grass. We need permanent shade structures and trees as opposed to umbrellas and other structures that are prone to easy breakage, sun damage, wind damage, or being knocked down by wind and enthusiastic students. Students of this age have not yet developed a strong connection with their biological needs and therefore are unlikely to take needed shade breaks on their own. Additionally, living in a place like Southern California in the time of global warming, the sun is only going to get more intense as the years pass. I have two additional comments on our playgrounds, which are a desire that would make my life as a teacher easier rather than a safety concern. When improving our current playgrounds, or building new ones, please include standing sand and water tables rather than in-ground ones. Students get sand in their shoes and socks in the in-ground sand boxes and in their diapers, which I am sure is thoroughly uncomfortable for them. Additionally, the sand is more readily thrown out of the in-ground and sandboxes and more readily used by neighborhood cats as litter boxes. Please also put locker boxes, lock boxes over water valves. I have students who have figured out how to open the water valves as the playground on the playground and have made quite the mess of themselves, me and the playground in the process. General campus security or safety. Please make sure there is a place for the buses to pull directly up to the front of a safe location on the preschool campus, such as the front gates or a classroom door. Currently at CDC, classroom aides have to walk up to the Smythe parking lot and get students off the bus, then walk them out to the sidewalk and through the CDC parking lot. This provides many opportunities for students to run away from the class directly onto Smythe Avenue. This also reduces the number of adults able to supervise students to the classroom during arrival and dismissal times when the classroom teacher is likely to be tending to the needs and questions of parents who are picking up and dropping off their students. Please also consider evacuation needs during a school emergency. At CDC, students are evacuated into the unfenced parking lot. This provides many opportunities for students to run out onto Smythe Avenue, which they are even more likely to do when they are scared by the loud noises of an alarm and the change in routine of an evacuation. Additionally, having students in the parking lot hinders the ability of emergency vehicles to access campus in the event of an emergency. Furthermore, there's only one safe exit route from the campus. We've been told the stairs between Smythe and CDC are not safe to use with students. Where do we go if the threat is coming from the front of the campus? Mobility needs must also be considered, as well as practicality should we need to vacate to an off-campus location or cover a lot of distance, say needing to evacuate to the opposite end of the giant OVH campus. Three-year-olds with special needs generally do not move quickly or in unison, especially if they're also dealing with students who use walkers or wheelchairs, or students who are running away from the group, reducing the number of adults able to tend to the remaining students. Should we need to cover distance quickly, something like buggies or multi strollers into which we can strap students may be our best hope at getting all students away from danger before it's too late. Moving on to bathrooms. All preschool classrooms need to have in-classroom preschool-sized toilets. Kindergarten toilets are much too large for preschool students. They fall in. CDC has a great in-classroom bathroom facilities. This allows for students who have low body awareness to move quickly to the restroom when needed and allows teachers to supervise both students in the restroom and the classroom at the same time. It also reduces potential safety hazards from students wandering away during out of classroom bathroom breaks. It is also thoroughly convenient that the classrooms at CDC also have in-classroom adult-sized toilets. This really reduces the amount of supervision lost when staff need to use a restroom as they do not need to travel to a different space on campus and potentially wait for other staff members or visitors already using the restroom. Special education classrooms need to have facilities for potty training students. This requires a single room with a preschool sized toilet and space for a changing table with stairs as well as a place to store student clothes and diapers and to dispose of diapers in a safe manner that will not make classrooms stink. Trash cans with lids work fine. Since we do not know how many general education or special education classrooms we will need in the future, outfitting all preschool classrooms with a space that can accommodate potty training is likely the smartest idea. Making a space this big with a preschool-sized toilet, no need to put in changing tables until we need them. CDC is already outfitted appropriately in this regard. We also need to make sure that in-classroom bathrooms have their own air conditioning vent or have separate fans that work for cooling, not just ventilation. HCAs end up spending up to an hour at a time in these bathrooms, lifting students and changing their diapers. They get hot quickly and classroom air conditioning is not enough. Furthermore, all preschool classrooms need a sink with paper towel dispenser and soap dispenser that is sized appropriately for preschool students and a separate one that is sized appropriately for adults. Having to have students stand on a stool to reach the sink is sometimes unsafe and often impossible for students who use walkers or wheelchairs. Having teachers consistently bend down to reach the sink contributes to the development and exacerbation of back problems. Classroom needs. We need all preschool classrooms to be walker and wheelchair accessible. I say all preschool classrooms for 3 reasons. 1, students with physical disabilities do not necessarily also have cognitive impairments that necessitates their participation in a special education classroom. So we could, at any time, have students who use walkers or wheelchairs placed in a general education classroom. 2, we need to have the ability to mainstream students with physical disabilities into the general education classrooms. And 3, you never know when you will need a classroom to function as a general education classroom or a special education classroom. So you're better off designing all the classrooms to be accessible so that you can change their utilization as needs change. Universal design. To make classrooms wheelchair and walker accessible, we need to have classrooms that are big enough to accommodate the necessary furniture for a classroom, as well as walkways and workspaces that are large enough for walkers and wheelchairs. We also need to have classroom doors that open on ground level or have ramps that go to the classroom doors. At present, I think all pre through K classrooms have this. Hooray. This also helps accommodate parents who bring siblings in strollers with them to pick up their students. Again, universal design. Please eliminate carpeting in preschool classrooms. We have students who are in the midst of potty training and may have bathroom accidents in class. This is much harder to clean out of carpeting than hard surfaces. We also have students who may not have the body awareness to get to a toilet before throwing up, or the communication abilities to tell us that they don't feel well. Again, cleaning vomit out of carpet is more difficult than cleaning it from hard surfaces, especially in the time of COVID. This sanitation concern is also a safety concern. Since we are required to keep classroom doors locked during the school day in case of an active shooter, please add doorbells which visitors can ring when they need to get into the classrooms. At present, we cannot hear people who are knocking at our doors during the school day and frequently end up losing instructional time to first taking phone calls from the office about disgruntled visitors who can't get into our classrooms. Then having to go wait for them at the door as they make their way from the office back to our classrooms once again. Please make sure all classrooms have adequate storage, even trailer classrooms. Some of the classrooms in main buildings are great, or have great shortage cabinets built into the classrooms themselves, then more fantastic storage cabinets and drawers in the hallways. The trailer classrooms have no storage, which makes it difficult to keep adequate materials on hand for teaching our students. If two teachers are sharing a classroom, please make sure there is a separate space for teachers to work during the other teacher's class. In some classes, there are office spaces in the classroom. Some have a hallway outside of the classroom with desk space. Both work. Just please make sure the space exists. Teachers cannot effectively concentrate on their work when a class is being held around them. While most furniture in preschool classrooms needs to be short so that teachers can easily supervise small students, there should be at least one piece of furniture that is waist to chest high for teachers so that there is a space where we can work while standing up straight. We end up needlessly hurting our backs because we have to bend over while tending to cleaning and organizing tasks on top of short shelves and tables. Campus needs. All preschool classrooms need easy access to cafeteria and nurse LVN services. At present, these are easy to access on some campuses, but not others. If we have one big preschool campus, they need their own cafeteria and nurse/LVN. If we intend to keep preschool classrooms spread between multiple school sites, please physically cluster the preschool classrooms together so that it's easy for us to work with each other and have students move between the classrooms for activities such as mainstreaming. If we make one large preschool campus, we need several non-classroom spaces on campus. We need one, a large meeting room where we can hold parent trainings as well as whole staff meetings. This space could also be used for events like picture day and vision and hearing screenings. Two, several smaller meeting spaces that can hold up to 10 people. This way we can hold multiple IEP/parent conference/small staff meetings at a time. These spaces could also be used by DIS providers who travel between schools like OT and PT to work with students in their caseloads, on their caseloads. We need several of these. Three, a laundry facility that can be entered without walking through another classroom or meeting space so teachers can access without disrupting other classrooms, other classes and meetings. Four, a staff lounge for lunch breaks. This space should be reserved for staff only and should be used only for activities which will not be interrupted by teachers socializing during breaks. No IEP meetings, parent conferences, student assessments, etc. Five, if teacher workspaces can be built into classrooms themselves, we could also build several small workspaces which teachers can use. Six, a designated special education assessment classroom. This classroom can be smaller than most classrooms, but should be used only for special education assessment activities. Preschool completes a remarkable number of special education assessments each year and has been working with less than ideal spaces in which to complete these. The student who we are assessing are students who need a highly controlled environment which to display their skills. The ideal assessment classroom would be a classroom with several attached office spaces into which assessors can pull students out of class for individual assessments. Furniture. We need more low, heavy, sturdy shelves appropriate for preschool classrooms. We just don't have enough to go around at the moment. I've been to the warehouse to look for more and we just don't have them. That's it. And that was Missy Hendrick, Special Education Teacher, Child Development Center.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mata, and thank you for those.
We have one more, Mr.
Okay.
One more, just had to get a quick drink of water. Okay.
Can I just say something real quick? And I know we'll talk about it, but I've been on this board for almost 8 years now, and that is perhaps one of the most comprehensive, detailed public comment. Frankly, I think we're done with that. I mean, Mrs. Hendricks got it done. I mean, I honestly am very impressed with that, and I'm hoping we're obviously we take her recommendation seriously, and I just wanted to say that.
Okay, thank you.
I also, yeah, so did I. This is the first time I've heard Actually, I've been there, I've seen it, and I know that we've discussed it with Mrs. Varela and with Dr. Potter. We've known that there's been these, CDC has always been, I think, many years that they haven't been able to really maintain it the way it should be. And we didn't have the access to do it with money either. But she went very in detail and I appreciate it. I think she went from classroom to classroom and to special ed, which we serve quite a few. And this is something for our community to be able to have these needs for our students. I think it's very important. And I want to congratulate her and tell her thank you for speaking up and letting us know what she sees. And that's real important because they're there in the classroom. They see the needs, they see what we need. And that's a lot of good input. And thank you for giving us that input. And I think that we all are going to agree that we need to make sure that we do it.
Great. Would you like me to continue, Mr. President?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Mata.
Okay. The next public comment comes from Miss Judith Crispo Moreno, facility, and this is regarding facility meeting input. Thank you for taking community input about the district's master facility plans. My comments are regarding the status of La Mirada Elementary School. I'm an employee of the district working at La Mirada, so I have firsthand information on the school. A few years ago, the interiors of the classrooms and other facilities were renovated at La Mirada. Unfortunately, the improvements were not extended to the playgrounds. All of the playgrounds on the campus are in dire need of repairs. The kindergarten area in particular is in a depleted state. The repairs that are needed are beyond cosmetic. They are safety issues. These are the details. Bullet point number 1. The blacktop surface is pitted and rough, and that has led to many children getting scraped skin or their legs and on their legs and arms. Bullet point 2. The rubber surface mat is falling apart. It is lifting on the edges, and there are holes which have caused the children to trip and fall. Big chunks of the rubber mat can often be found lying about as the children are able to pull it up with just their hands. Next bullet point. The chain link fencing around the kinder playground is peeling up from the ground, exposing sharp pieces of metal. There have been cases where children's feet or shoes have been caught on these pieces of metal. Some fence needs to be taller to prevent rubber balls from flying into the parking lot on a regular basis. Next bullet point. There is a huge sandbox that takes up a good portion of the playground. The rusted out climbing equipment was removed, but the sand is still there, and there have been cases of children putting sand in the water fountain, therefore causing it to clog up. The quality of the sand is more like dirt, and items such as big rocks, trash, glass, and even animal feces have been found in it. At one point, maintenance put up a caution tape around the sandbox, but that didn't last very long. Final bullet point. There is only one piece of climbing equipment for sometimes around 50 children. On that structure, there is an exposed piece of rusted metal which is within reach of the children. All of these safety hazards have been brought up to the administration, and the district did send out an employee to assess the playground area. My understanding is that the school was told that it was a money issue. Now that Props T and U were approved by the voters in March of 2020, it is time to completely overhaul the La Mirada playgrounds to give the children the safe outdoor environment they deserve. That's the end. I'm going to check one more time to make sure we haven't gotten any more. And to this point, Mr. President, we have not gotten any more public comments.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mata. Great job and great detail in these comments. So now I guess I'll turn the microphone to Mr. Camillo to facilitate our virtual town hall.
Thank you. And I think everybody can hear me.
Yes.
And I believe that my PowerPoint will come up here in a second. Todd, I believe, was going to play scribe for me, play audio visual consultant. So I'm going to go through about a 20-minute presentation, and I at first thought it was a lot to have the public comment or some of it first, but having heard it and recorded everything on a pad while it was being read, it is amazing how well this dovetails into this presentation. So I'm glad we did it the way we did it, because I think the public present on the site or on YouTube will understand exactly a little bit better why that input is so valuable and how it fits into what we're doing in terms of facility master planning. So as the board will recall, and others who might have been in our meeting in, I believe it was July, much of what you'll see here in the next couple minutes is that same presentation, and that is intentional. In facility master planning, it is really, really important that we keep to sort of a common messaging throughout everywhere so that everybody hears the dialogue in the same way. So let me at least start by reintroducing myself. I am Jim D. Camillo. I'm the president of WLC Architects. I do master planning for facility master planning for school districts up and down California. I would say San Ysidro would be considered down. You are the bottom of that diagram is Mexico. So, but I've worked all the way up to the northern border of California as well. So this is your site. This is your district from a very tall satellite. And I think the only reason I share this is because it gives an impression with the geographic area of the district, how big of a mass of acreage land we're dealing with at San Ysidro School District. But also interesting in the next slide, how small the area is where all of your schools are located. Why I bring this up is the same reason I brought it up with the principals. It's the same reason I brought it up with the school board, and it's the same reason I'll bring it up again this evening. And that is that in many districts we work, the schools are nowhere near each other. People have no way of comparing them. They never see each other's school. They're literally on a separate planet as far as the public is concerned, but not your district. Your schools are very close together. They're all grouped. I wouldn't doubt if certain family members have kids at multiple schools, or if maybe they've been to multiple schools. Why that's critical in master planning is because at San Ysidro, I believe your people know the parity between the various sites. That is not true in every school district we work, but I think it's critical here. This evening's presentation, the big yellow circle, is really around even a smaller universe, solar system within the universe, and that's the area in the northwest corner of the district regarding La Mirada, Smythe, and essentially the CDC. We're going to go over a few things. That agenda, we're going to talk about master planning process, master planning projects, product, what is a master plan, and then finally a little bit on the site-by-site descriptions, and hopefully this might even spark some additional community input at the end. Next slide. What's really difficult for people to understand is really what the whole process of master planning is about, and a lot of it is just input seeking, seeking input from stakeholders, and then a good portion of it is what I call missionary work. It's going out and actually spreading the mission of the master plan, and also then the themes that go along with the master plan from the various people we hear it from. I don't come with an agenda to the process, although I've done this many times. We're really here to hear a lot of input and then scribe that into the master plan. I want folks who might be listening in to know that everything that's being said is being recorded by me, but your name is not going to appear next to any comments. This is all totally anonymous. We want this to be an open book and have people feel free to give comment freely without concerns that I, say something inappropriate or will I in any way suffer a consequence for speaking out. No, the comments we want to capture because the master plan goes on for many, many years and we don't want anything lost in the translation. So we'll try and capture the intent, but not the exact sentencing or wording of input. We get input from many, many sources, and I've highlighted the source we're on now. We've already completed in the master plan process input from many of the district stakeholders. There's many audiences for a master plan. The audience of the district is actually interested in global issues that surround the entire district. We've talked to the individual school sites. I've had a meeting with every single principal of every school, including the director of the preschool, since those comments we heard were mostly regarding preschool. And now it's time to get input from the community groups. We'll also hope to, at some point, be able to even talk to students and get their input because they have a different perspective they bring from their side of the desk or table. And occasionally, depending on the projects that come out of the master plan, we may even want to talk to some of your sister governing agencies who may have plans or overlap with joint use of facilities and sites. And so that occasionally from district to district becomes important. So the bottom line of this slide is this is a public information gathering process. Again, I don't come with any sort of an agenda, but if we go to the next slide, what we generally find is that most districts have similar challenges. Every district is unique, but there are some themes that tend to run through the challenges that school districts are facing in the early part of the 21st century. And those are listed here on this slide. I'm not big on acronyms, and this really doesn't spell anything, but it's sometimes easy to remember it in this way. When I was doing master planning many years ago, the technology was always right at the very top. Now security has sort of taken its place at the top of most people's agendas. And so the big issues that we deal with are security, technology, evolution, not Darwin type evolution, but facilities evolution. We are seeing a major transformation of our educational spaces. And this meeting alone being held on Zoom is a great example of it. I don't think you've ever gone through this much evolution as you have in the last 6 months, but yeah, a lot of evolution going on in the way that we teach and information about how our kids learn. There's a maintenance component to master planning. You can do the greatest planning in the world, but if everything falls apart 3 years after you build it, that's not a very good investment of dollars. Parity is one that most people don't think of very often. I think most people think of parity as everything being the same. That's not exactly what we're talking about. We're not talking about identical, but we're talking about similar facilities. And I love the comments that came up, although they didn't know they were talking about them earlier. There is issue of parity between those students and teachers who are in portables, or so what some people call bungalows or trailers, and those that are in permanent facilities. And so parity becomes really important. Your district, like most, has a number of people in portable classrooms, and with the best of intentions, they were put down years ago, hoping they would only be there for a semester or two. And now you found that years later, those are still out on the blacktop. Apart from restrooms, apart from not near the office, not connected in rainy weather. And so parity is that, but parity is also across the district. So there's parity within the campus, and there's also parity outside of the campus. And that first map hopefully showed this well, in that the idea would be if a student, if a parent simply moves their house or apartment from one side of your district to the other, would they find a similar curriculum, facility, instructional modality from one school to the other? And the hope would be yes, that at the San Ysidro School District, you would get a parity education no matter what school you were in. And the same is true for your faculty. It's not uncommon that faculty move over the years from one site to the other, and that they should have facilities that are similarly equipped no matter what school they're at, assuming they're doing a parity job. Lastly is sustainability. It was mentioned actually in the global warming comment from the first comment. Sustainability is critical these days. And so we need to make sure that we are planning with things like energy efficiency in mind. It's not only good for the planet, but it's good for the pocketbook. So sustainability is something that we deal with a lot in master planning. And all of this eye candy of pictures there on the right just give a hint to those various topics. One that I will touch on, and I always do, that little card key in the top left-hand corner, security and safety. Like I said, that's right at the top of everybody's agenda these days. And many, many schools are now working with us to put in what's considered to be an access control system. So if you're wondering what that thing is, many school districts that we work with are employing an access control. It's a card key access to your classrooms, every doors in the campus. Very popular project right now to solve a security challenge. Next slide. So what do you do about it? If you went to a doctor and said, my arm hurts, that doctor would probably give you 1 or 3 different remedies. Do physical therapy, go to the hospital, get your arm reset, maybe just take a pill that will help with the soreness until it goes away. The same is true with facilities. There are remedies that we look to, and they're pretty obvious really when you think about it. The 4 categories of remedies in facility master planning are: 1, you build something you don't have. And that was mentioned a couple times in the public comment already. So they're right on task here. There are certain facilities that you simply don't have at your school sites. And that might be, you know, Jim, what are you talking about? A special education assessment room. That's the intent of building something you simply don't have. Probably the biggest category in districts such as yourselves is renovate something you already do have. And you see that around your sites. That's improvements to facilities that you have, but they're a little tired. You know, facilities don't last forever. I wish they did. Maybe as an architect, I should hope they don't, but we renovate facilities that we already do have. Change out products, materials, finishes, flooring, cabinetry, and renovate them because maybe they were built in an era in which those facilities were used differently than you're currently using them now. And we see that a lot in master planning, where rooms that you think of as something was never really intended to be used for what you're currently using the room for. So there's some TLC that needs to be done to some of those facilities. Hugely important is improvement of sites and grounds. In other words, not the buildings themselves, but the actual property. And that was mentioned in both public comments we got so far this evening. And that's to look to fix things on the property. A lot of times the money stretches so far and people sort of forget about the parking lots and the playgrounds. But I know from already meeting with the district maintenance and facility staff that there is work to be done on those. And I was glad to hear about it again here this evening. And then the last category was mentioned again, and this is really not architecture at all. It's not building anything. It's upgrading the furniture and the technology and the equipment to make your schools function for their desired use. And we are seeing, you know, a tremendous change here. If anything has evolved in our school planning, it's in this fourth category. You can build a beautiful building, but if it doesn't function for what you want it to do, or as a contractor once told me, you're always bumping into the building to try and get done what you need to get done, then there's probably a lot of work that needs to be done in the technology and how the buildings are outfitted. Those are the four major remedies. And when we do and author your master plan in the end, all projects will be brought into these categories. Build something new, renovate something old, improve the site, or upgrade the furnishing. Next slide. I'm not going to go through all of these. There's two slides here that look at those categories we talked about earlier: security, technology, evolution, maintenance, parity, and sustainability. But if this slideshow is available either online or whatever, it's a great opportunity for the community to take a look at some of the typical projects, some things you may not actually think of often that enhance these 6 different criteria. So I'll just pick out a couple. For example, security, I already talked about access control systems, number 1. If you go to technology, it's, number 2, providing increased student and staff access to the network. One of the things you are finding out now is how challenging it is to do things like Zoom meetings, and it all comes down to bandwidth. What you're now experiencing is the issues, and you're seeing this with the 5G revolution, is the ability to pump video and even this sort of public comment across a video stream, which is very challenging. But when we all get back together in the classrooms, you're going to see the need to do more and more of this because people will become more and more accustomed to it, believe it or not. So everybody will have an expectation that you'll be able to meet. And now that we have the backbones of these technologies, it will not be odd for a classroom at Sunset to be talking to a classroom on the other side of the district or on the other side of the country. That will become very commonplace. This technology didn't exist a few weeks ago. Next slide. I won't touch on many of these specifically, but I did already on the parity one. It's probably the one that most people don't understand that much, but it does talk to aligning school facilities and comparably outfitting the instruction and support space across the district. So we actually do a study in the master plan that looks at square footage per student and even square footage of some of the support spaces. Because what happens over time is enrollment changes at the schools, and to use a technical term, things get out of whack. The facility just isn't right sized for the enrollment that you have there. And you know already some of your schools that are in that mode. Next slide. So as we get to the end of this here, these are the sites that we're specifically talking about this evening. So this is La Mirada from a very tall ladder. And just to let you know, our master plan does include diagrams in the end for each site, proposed projects for each site, and then also not just buildings, but grounds. And so not that there's anything to learn from this, but that's La Mirada. And you can, in this case, you can see the portables. Some of those are not there anymore, and the school site has been renovated. But the next slide will show we've had a meeting with the principal of every school. So next slide will give you the principal's input. When we met with the principal at La Mirada, we had about 2 hours with each principal. And a couple of the key projects that came up, you'll recognize the categories: build something new. Well, at La Mirada, the things that rose to the top were a permanent building to replace the remaining portables. But the potential for changing the main office, while the school was renovated, the main office is still not as secure as one would think. We call it a single point of entry is the terminology. In other words, when you come through the front gate, there is no way to go in anywhere but the office. And that's the ideal these days. You've done a great job in the district sort of getting halfway there. There's a buzzer and that sort of thing. But it's not still quite to the point where the only way you can get in the school is by going through the front office. We didn't really have much on renovation. And as it was said in the second comment we received, the school was recently renovated. So there isn't a significant amount on that. I'm sure there's some honeydews, there always are, left over within the site that maybe didn't either come out the way people were hoping or maybe need a little bit of tweaking. But there was a lot of comment about improving the site and grounds. And so our second comment from the public earlier, I mean, this is verbatim, right? Exactly the same things that was talking about. So it seems like we're reaching consensus already, replacing playground equipment and safety surfacing. There's the east parking lot was really just asphalt put on the ground years ago and was never truly completed to a full-on parking lot. There's a garden that's kind of left over by the east parking lot. And then there's a lot of concerns. There's some flooding conditions along the street frontage in rainy weather. So those were the big ones that came up. We didn't talk too much about furniture, again, because much of it was just replaced. Next slide. And this is Smythe. If you don't know in the community, but you'll probably begin to realize it, it is essentially the same school. It's a sister school to La Mirada. And I have to admit, in the school districts that I've worked with, these may be the two closest elementary schools to each other that I've ever worked with. Not the physical plant, but literally the property. These schools are very close together. And obviously then they also share the same footprint. Next slide. And the principal's input was similar here. Now, remember, we interviewed the principals separately, so none of them have actually seen the slides that came out of their input. But again, we got the same, which was Smythe doesn't have as many of the portables left, so we don't have the build something new here, but it is the issue because they got the new wings that were added to the north end of Smythe. But here you see again, the same concern for the office entry. While it's sort of halfway there, it's not completely there yet. Not much on renovation because the school was recently renovated, but again, bingo, site and grounds, often left off of modernization projects is, in this case, not the east parking lot, but the north parking lot, curbs and lighting for back to school nights when people are there late. It's kind of dark. And then obviously the playground equipment and safety surfacing. Next slide. The Child Development Center is an interesting animal. It obviously is put together on a very small site and has a pretty good size enrollment. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see a lot of the same comments that were brought up. You can see the long list, very similar to what the first, back right there, to what the first comment had. And so I was nodding my head and remembering my meeting with the principal, which was actually a few months ago now, but right as COVID hit is actually when those meetings occurred. But I think if I went through them all, you'll find that many of these are the same comments again. So What will happen with the comments this evening is they will also then be brought into the master plan along with the principal's input. And that way we don't lose anything and nothing just sort of gets dropped on the cutting room floor as we go through it. But you'll see here the exact same issues of clean surfaces and main entry security and outdoor play equipment storage and elongating the drop-off lane. The CDC needs some major work. Now, it was interesting that it was said, and you'll see it at the very top line, was the possibility of literally reconstructing this entire facility as a permanent set of buildings. Because right now it is literally a set of portable buildings, and this goes to the parity issue again. I keep harping on that, and you'll notice I put in parentheses there because it did come up, the question of the La Mirada site or the Bayer site as a permanent location for a permanent CDC. It will be impossible to replace that facility while it's operational. There simply isn't any space on the site to build another school while school's going on there. So that a lot of discussion went on around that. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the next couple slides, which are the last couple, by the way. Next slide. We do have a preschool facility at Sunset, which is really more like what we're talking about now. This was permanent and built essentially at the same time in architectural vocabulary as the main school. So this is more like what we're talking about when we're talking about parity of facilities. Next slide. And then also at Ocean View Hills as well, or OVH, here where we see a permanent facility, but the preschool is basically a portable in the back. Its own playground dedicated, which is great for the kids, but the facility was never really perceived in the original master plan of the school. So your preschool facilities are kind of all over the place. I think being well used, obviously, but being treated differently at each site. Next slide. That's the end of the show. What happens with all of this input that we receive, and I'm not sure if any other input came in afterwards, I want to assure the public, and we're going to have similar meetings in the next couple of weeks regarding the various sites, that again, we record everything. And if those in the community are wondering, am I too late? Is everything already decided? The answer is no, it is not. We are in the beginning, sort of the middle part of this process. So I would say get your comments in, tell your neighbors to get their comments in. We take everything down and we put it all in a big bowl. One of the things that will be unique about San Ysidro is that with Prop T and U already having passed, we are going to probably get into what we call an implementation plan. Because what most people wonder is, this is nice, Mr. Camillo, but when does all this happen? With many people do their master plan sort of out ahead of a bond measure or even a funding vehicle at all. And when they do that, it's very hard to put an implementation plan together because, quite frankly, you don't have any money to do any of this with. With the bonds having passed, we have a luxury, if you will, of being able to put an implementation plan. I want to assure the public and the board, I think I brought this up when I presented to the board earlier, I want everybody to resist the temptation to use the word priority or that something's more important than something else. I can assure you everything is important to somebody. Most of the time, the best implementation plans are about stretching the dollars that you have as effectively as possible. And that often means grouping projects, having projects that are similar in scale and scope, or combining projects on a site, because it makes your construction dollars stretch further. So I don't want anybody in the community, the board, to think, gee, is that site not as important as another site? No, that's rarely the issue. The issue normally is around how do we win the chess game with as few moves of the pieces as possible. Every move of a piece costs money. And so your hope is to get the other side into checkmate without moving the pieces that much. That's how you stretch your dollars to be at their maximum for the work you're trying to get accomplished. So we'll talk a little bit in the process about priorities, but we'll talk more about a strategic implementation plan and how to do this district-wide. And that's why I always come back to that earliest slide that just talks about this is a district-wide facility master plan. The best analogy I can give is if you're going to create an access control plan for all of your sites, unless the custodian's going to have the world's largest key ring, you basically want to implement some things district-wide all at the same time so that the whole district goes live with a educational curriculum network or an access control system or something, versus going site by site by site by site, and then you just do the Golden Gate Bridge thing and start and paint it all over again. So certain things will be done district-wide, other things will be done on a site-by-site basis, but always done with the concept of trying to stretch your dollars by efficient planning. And that's my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Camillo. That was excellent. And I would like to open now the mic first to allow board members to see if there's any comments. We'll start with Ms. Irene.
Well, it's a long, I know we needed to get going with this. And I think that the next meeting, I hope to have more input from the community. I think it's real important. And it's a process that's very clear. Thank you, Mr. Ticarrillo, how the process is and what holds and stake with each group and what we'll be doing. But like you say, I know that a lot of our child care center has been here for years. And usually it was La Mirada, we had preschool at Sunset, La Mirada, we had it at Willow preschool, and then we no longer could have it there because of the room. But I'm just wondering, because even though I know that what the teacher had as input there, Smythe is a small facility. I don't know if we'll be able to put any more classrooms or make it. It's going to be I think one that we'll really have to work with you regarding that.
I agree.
And I know it's hectic. I've been there and seen when the teachers or the aides have to go up the stairs to go pick up the kids from the buses to bring them down into the classroom. I saw what you wrote, and I've seen that happen. And that's another thing, a lot of things that are there that I've seen with the kids when they're playing, and you know, they don't have a lot of, how would you say it? They give their input. They say when there's something wrong, and I've seen it when I've gone to visit. It has been the playground. It has been those sandboxes. And it's true, there is a part there that's nice. It has grass, but it's not big enough for all the classrooms. And I know they do rotate their classrooms, but that's something that our kids, we need to look for in the future too. They have a playground that's going to be accessible to them for all of them, especially now when we have special ed children. I think that's real important too. But I think that working together and listening and working together to find a solution, I think we're going to be doing a lot of good things. That's all. La Mirada and Smythe are, you know, I know they've done some work, and I know that a lot of our staff were not happy with it, even though there is still, they felt they weren't heard actually when they did do the process. They did let them know what they needed, but then in the end, they didn't follow through with it. And that's what I think left us with what we have. But some parts of the schools are nice. I mean, the library, some of the structures are good, but we still had to put money into it. So that's another thing that we need to really look at and get input from those people who attend there, the students, the parents. I'd like to have them have their talk about it. Let us know what they see, because sometimes we don't see it. And maybe it's an idea or something that a parent or a community member sees, or a staff member. That's what we need. That's what we need to know.
Well, Mr. Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, Mr. Di Camillo, a couple of things. One, good presentation. I think it's a good start. I do feel similar to Irene that we need more community input, particularly, and I'm going to talk about it, you know, so I'm going to group La Mirada and Smythe together. because I think talking about the CDC, that's a separate category. But as we've seen with public comment, La Mirada and Smythe still need a lot of work, obviously. But I can assure you that the ones who are going to know exactly what to do to improve those facilities are going to be staff. Yep. Staff, students, and perhaps parents, but staff because they obviously, you know, day in and day out go to work there. So as we've seen with the, you know, beautiful public comment that we received today, let's continue to collect more info from our staff members to essentially be as comprehensive as possible to you know, see what we need to do to improve those two facilities.
Yes, we've already started talking about the best way to facilitate essentially a staff meeting. In traditional times, I would come and do their staff prep day or afternoon and make a presentation similar to this. So Marilyn and Paulo and I have started to talk about what's the best way to facilitate that in a Zoom world. So hopefully we either get back together soon or we do this virtually like we're doing tonight.
Perfect. The other aspect of my comment is, you know, the CDC. So I honestly believe, and I'm sure many would agree with me, that that facility is really non-usable. We shouldn't be using that facility anymore. If anything, we need to renovate it to use it for something else, but not for CDC. My initial thought was having a new building completely built from scratch at the buyer site. And particularly, and I'm going to give credit to my dear friend Raquel Marquez Maiden, who actually came up with the idea of maybe doing a dual school. So not just a preschool at the buyer site, but also maybe a special education school combined with the preschool. Obviously, that's going to take a lot of community input and whatnot. But for that particular, and I'm going to call it monster because it's huge, we need to have community input, particularly from local leaders, and address the issue of the buyer site completely. I like what you said about the implementation plan. I was on the San Isidro Planning Group for many years, and during my tenure there, we were essentially discussing the community plan update, which, excuse me, since 1980, the community plan update hadn't been updated. And we finally were able to do that. But one of the things I always was very upset about in terms of coming up with that game plan was there have been projects that we've been talking about since 1980 that haven't been built. There's no sense of implementation, no sense of a number, no sense of how much it's going to cost, no sense of what grants are going to help pay to, you know, close the funding gap. So I really love what you just said about the implementation plan, because that makes the projects feasible, and it makes things makes things fun, in my opinion. It's not just something we're talking about, you know, hypothetically. This is actual reality. So one of the thoughts, particularly with the buyer site, if we're going to make that move, I would recommend having a presentation with community leaders on just that. I can give some recommendations as to who. I mean, my initial first thought would be the San Isidro Planning Group, for example. The chairman, Mr. Michael Freeman, is one person we should definitely talk to. Obviously, Hearts and Hands Working Together, Senora Alicia Jimenez is another person you should definitely talk to. Even the Park and Rec City of San Diego Council, you know, they've been essentially, they have actually their facilities literally adjacent to La Mirada. So having a conversation with them, really just, you know, being as comprehensive as possible. And that one, we definitely need community and parent input. But that would be my thought, you know, having, obviously, when you deal, and I'm going to just summarize, when you deal with La Mirada and Smythe, that's obviously stick with staff. I mean, things staff's going to know a lot about, especially the details. But in terms of the CDC, we need to go bigger on that one. And I do believe, at least that's my opinion, that the buyer site could be used for that, and a brand new facility that we're all going to appreciate. And hopefully we can leave our mark in a positive way, and ensure that, you know, not only that preschool kids have a quality, you know, facility, but also maybe again possibly having that as a special education school too. So maybe combining both. And that's just my thought.
Well, you'll notice in the stakeholder input, I did list government agencies as another universe of people that we do need to talk to, especially when you reach out to a site that, you know, now is sitting empty. So I agree wholeheartedly. Yeah.
Thank you, Antonio. Thank you. I have just a couple of comments because I think that was a great presentation. And first, I think, again, we need to thank the voters of this community for putting us in this situation where we're actually excited and close to starting to fix a lot of the issues that have been affecting our schools for such a long time. And really answering the calls and the questions that our staff has regarding our facilities. So I'm excited about that. I'm really excited as well about the parity aspect of the whole plan and making sure that, because when we talk about equity in our state and our communities in our district, we need to start from within. So the fact that we have some students in crumbling trailers and others in very nice classrooms with perfectly functioning everything, I think that's where we should start. And obviously, like Mr. Camillo said, it's hard to put priorities because they're all priorities in terms of what we need to do. But I'm really interested in that aspect to make sure that we provide every student with the facilities that they deserve. And that definitely makes a big difference in terms of the education. And ultimately, that's what we want for them to achieve and be successful in the next steps in their education. So I'm excited about that aspect. And one of the things I'll piggyback on what Mr. Martinez was saying, I think we need to also focus on that buyer site. I agree. If we can create one specific town hall just for that site, because I think that's a huge, huge issue that has been also, just put in the back burner for so long. And I'm not saying that we should rush into any decisions with that property or that site, but we need to start getting on it because we could, there are so many opportunities out there for that. So now, fortunately, I know it all costs money and we might not be able to do what we want, but definitely we need to explore and also communicate with the community because they're the ones that we need to answer to when they're asking, right? So anyway, I agree with Mr. Martinez, and I think that's something we should look at. And I agree if we can create or have a special town hall specifically for that site would be great as well. But those are my comments. I want to thank also Mr. Camillo again for that thorough presentation.
Welcome.
Dr. Potter or anybody else?
Thank you, Mr. President. I certainly share all of the recommendations and concerns that our governing board members have. I would echo the comments from Mr. President, just thanking our voters in our community for their very strong support of our San Ysidro School District. It's a true blessing for us to have this opportunity to have both Measures T and Measures U pass. So thank you so very much. I also echo the comments of Mr. Martinez, our Vice President, who really talked about securing staff feedback, and I'll add in their family feedback as well. I am concerned during COVID that, and I share the concern with the board members that doing the town hall meetings virtually, we wanted to move forward with the long range master facility plan process and not stall it anymore. The last few months we've been waiting, hoping we could do these in person, but it just does not seem to be a reality to have a gathering of a meeting. Therefore, they're being conducted virtually. One of the things that our families and staff are very good at is, particularly our staff, responding to surveys. And so we do have some survey platforms. We have Thought Exchange and we have SurveyMonkey that we're able to deploy. And our staff, as you've seen in the two public comments, will give some very detailed, pragmatic feedback to the district that will be exceptionally helpful to the process of developing the long-range master facility plan. So if there's a way for us, Mr. Camillo, for you to work with our team, our chief business official, she gave a thumbs up. Thank you. I saw her thumbs up. Do you see her? That's Miss Marilyn right there. See, she did this. If we can work with her, please, and Mr. Azevedo, who I know is listening to our meeting right now, to put together a staff and family survey that we can send out. We're going to get some really good feedback that way. And it gives people an opportunity to type in their answers, and then you can actually have it right in front of you to disaggregate, and then maybe start to make themes by school of what folks need. So the surveys was one. Going to our former board president, Mrs. Lopez, regarding Smythe and La Mirada and the preschools, I have to agree that, you know, also hearing from them, what did we miss when we modernized Smythe and La Mirada? What do we need to finish? I'd really like to know what their thoughts are on that. And I have to share that the concern that our teacher, Ms. Crespo, brought up on playgrounds, we didn't modernize the playgrounds in any of our schools.
No.
And I strongly feel that our playgrounds in all of our schools are a big issue for our children, for their safety and for their well-being. It's time, and I would add into playground shade.
Mhm.
I
Very
feel
common
like
right
we
now.
don't have enough shade on our playground, so if that's something we can consider. With La Mirada and Smythe, I can't tell if the infrastructure of the plumbing and the electrical were updated. And if you could look back in the planning records,
Sure.
to let us know, because sometimes we'll modernize what you can see, but the actual infrastructure, the bones of the building might not have been updated. So I sometimes worry, you know, did we update that plumbing and electrical infrastructure and the broadband with infrastructure for technology or not? So if you could age that for us so that we know in our long range master facility plan how old the infrastructure is, I think that would be really helpful. And then my final comment are and the surveys that we've done with staff and families, safety and security always rise to the top.
You saw it was right there at the
Safety and security are like the perimeter fencing at almost all of our schools are a big issue for us. Having a single point of entry so that everybody who comes on campus has to check in through the front office and can't just come on campus and walk around the campus. Those are issues that always rise to the top with our surveys from both staff and families. And I just want to make sure that I echo the concerns that I've been receiving so that you have it on record from our town hall this evening. I have no other comments. I simply say thank you for guiding us through this process.
You're welcome.
The buyer lot is a big, very important issue for our community, and the degree that we can maybe build a new preschool or a family resource center, or a special spot for our special education services. I really think that bringing life back to the buyer location is very important to our community. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Camillo.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Potter. I believe we have one more comment, or at least one more. And I'll ask Mr. Francisco Mata to please read it for us.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, we do have one more comment. This comment comes from Ms. Raquel Madden, and again has to do with the virtual town hall comment. Ms. Raquel Madden, parent. As a former student and parent of 2 students and numerous nephews and nieces who have attended our district's fabulous preschool child development program, I would like to express my support for the improvement of the preschool facilities in our district. As mentioned by a previous speaker, there are many things to consider to improve safety. We have a very gifted staff of teachers and instructional assistants who work for the preschool program. A new facility would make the program even better. I echo the comments of the previous speakers, including Mr. Martinez, but would also like to add that you might want to consider the buyer site for a preschool and child development specific site. In addition, I would like to offer the idea of housing a mod to severe special education program there. Currently, in the past, the district has incurred high costs in transporting and paying for students to attend non-public schools in other districts or private facilities such as Asseltine and Friendship School for students with moderate to severe special education needs. Bringing those students back to our district and providing an environment in which they can integrate with other children in their own community would be highly beneficial in the developing of a child's social interactions with their own community. In addition, as a working parent, I want to advocate for childcare program facility, much like the district had in the past, where parents can pay for care on a sliding fee scale, and those who can afford to pay full price can pay full price. We are a working class community of varying resources. We need to be supported by our district and organizations within San Isidro. End of comments.
Mr. De Camillo, I'll share with you that a typed version of the comments, public comments, are going to be emailed to you. I see you taking lots of notes.
Mm-hmm.
We also want you to have the actual transcript.
Perfect. Thank you.
So I have a question. What would be, Dr. Potter or Mr. De Camillo or anybody, the next few steps that we need to take, or when would we have another town hall? I know we don't have a crystal ball, but do we have some sort of schedule for that, or where do we go from here?
We do. There are at least 2 more that are on my calendar that cover the other sites in the district, the ones that we didn't talk about this evening. And then, as I said, we are trying to arrange through the principals to have a staff meeting at every site to get staff input. So those are the next 2 things on the docket for the immediate future, are those meetings for input. And as we see in many districts, I would love it if board members were able to sit in on, especially the staff meetings. It's just to hear the commentary there as well. Maybe it's not the whole board, but 1 or 2 as a designee. That it's really nice so that somebody's hearing all of the input. Because I think what you find is that you're going to hear a lot of commonality of themes. It is not just a random set of comments. This all begins to make sense as you go through these meetings. But those are the next things that are on the docket for the next few weeks.
Awesome. Any further comments from our board? Or for board members, I should say. Dr. Potter, you good? So should we go ahead and adjourn our meeting? All right, so that would put us at our last item on the agenda. I do want to thank Mr. De Camillo, staff that put this meeting together, and those of you out there in the audience, parents and our staff that have provided some wonderful comments and wonderful input. I really truly would hope, and I think we need to work a little bit more. I know virtual is hard for some people to attend and they're not used to it. It'd be great if we could do it in person, but we need to adapt, so maybe we can communicate even more about our town hall meetings to see if we can get more public comment. But this was a great start. Again, thank you to everybody that worked on this meeting, on this town hall, and thank you for participating in it. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn our special meeting.
So moved.
Mr. Martinez moves. I'll second. I was going to see if Ms. Lopez does it, but Dr. Potter, could you help us call a vote to adjourn? I believe you're muted, Dr. Potter.
Sorry, Mr. President. Calling for the roll call vote to adjourn our town hall meeting at a time of 6:19, beginning with board member Mrs. Irene Lopez.
Yes.
Thank you. Board Vice President Antonio Martinez.
Yes.
Thank you. And Board President Humberto Gormilan.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. President, the vote passes to adjourn by 3-0.
Thank you, Dr. Potter, and thank you, everybody, and have a good evening.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Thanks.
All right.
Have a nice week.
Thank you so
Good night,
much,
everybody.
everyone. Thank you. That was our first town